Welcome and thank you for clicking on my video. I know there's tons of videos out there, so I am just grateful for the opportunity to bring you guys some information, and I hope that it is overall helpful for the market because today we really need to answer some questions because we could be, forming some big sell-offs here. So the big question we need to answer for today is NVIDIA going to continue to sell off? Is the overall market going to continue to sell off because NVIDIA holds such a high weight right now? That's why we need to get into the shorter time frames and get you guys those weekly and the daily expected moves for this week. Going through some technical analysis for the SPY Qs, Apple, Tesla, Amazon, NVIDIA, AMD, and we're going to touch on Meta today as well. So let's get into it. Hopping right into the SPY, first off, just want to say I got to get me a new computer. This thing's lagging behind a little bit. Need a little more power to be able to stream for you guys every day. So do come back throughout your morning every day of the week because we do stream. We go live every single morning. So if you want a stock market live to follow these daily ranges that we're going to give you right now, come join us. You can ask questions, do all that good stuff. Okay, so for the week ahead, we noticed that the upside of our range here for the week, this is all the options market has priced in. It's a little bit big again. 520.85 to the upside, and then we do have 502.59 to the downside. And we overall were talking about throughout this whole price action, we did really, really well. I did really well. And if you were following this information, thank you so much for liking and subscribing, you guys, because we called this as a trap here. We called this one as a trap here. We called this as a trap here. And then we expected some kind of trap in this area. We went a little bit higher than we thought, but still came in as a trap. So we did very, very well. And now we have to see, because we are completing this cup, is this some kind of handle to head down? That's what we're going to talk about today, because if we do that on Monday, we could head towards the downside of our daily expected move. That'd be these red lines here, 508.05 to the downside here, and then 515.49 to the upside. So if we do get excited early on Monday, maybe some people trying to catch the dip, right? Then look for us to fade below this zone, right? Because we do land in here 68% of the time, and that goes the same for the weekly. So as far as tomorrow, though, really like this structure here, completing the cup, getting a bit of a handle here, could head lower. Now, where could this send us off to? We actually could be testing the bottom side of that weekly range pretty early on. This was some pretty good selling. If NVIDIA continues that selling, we could see that happen. We have to be paying attention very closely to banks and everything like that as well, okay? So now if you want to know if this is going higher, right? We're talking about downside. Downside looks pretty obvious. We're just now getting into negative territory. This is where the selling can escalate. Okay, once you get into that negative territory down here on this MACD, that's where it can really escalate. So this level right here is going to be very important. We actually could see some kind of positive reaction. What you notice is this MACD curl up into positive territory. We're not able to go negative. What does that mean? Well, at this point, it means we can come and test this high, we can make a new one, but also we could get some kind of reaction up to set up a little bit lower high or some kind of double top up here. So that's something we need to pay attention to as of this week goes. But positive side, you really just want to see if this 30-minute MACD is able to curl up. That means that positivity can stay in this market. But from how it looks right now, the probabilities are telling you this has structure to break down if it can cut through this area, most likely heading into negative territory. So that's what we really have to pay attention to. If I flip over to a 2-hour, this is why I'm really leaning towards those probabilities of downside, even going into Monday. So if we do get some kind of pop higher, I'm really not going to buy into that. I think that'll be another fake out in all these fake outs that we've had. And we're going to get one more that maybe sets up some kind of lower high, because you'll notice that daily expected move comes right to the top of this 2-hour bar. What do we have down here? We have triple divergence on the MACD. We only have that single divergence down here on the RSI. We were talking about this live, so this was a very, very good signal to follow, and a lot of the time this likes to roll over that daily. Okay, and the daily is way overextended at these levels. If you want to check out the previous video we put on Saturday, that would be a good point to do that. So if we do want to set up some kind of, structure in here, we can see that base down in this area, see that come down into this area, maybe even break through, right? Maybe even break through, come test that weekly expected move, and then we get some kind of reaction that gives us this great structure that we've really talked about for a little bit now on the way down. So if we really wanted this to break down further, that's overall how I would see it happening. That would be a very, very good technical look for a trader, but it doesn't always happen like that. So we have to be open to upside. So that means if we do hold up at higher levels, could this be just a small bounce to get some kind of retest and set up this little head and shoulders to get us into that bigger one? Well, we would want to pay attention to, if this MACD rolls down into negative territory, can it curl back up and cross into positive? Because if it fully is able to cross into positive and it holds at higher levels, you still have a shot to come test at least, I would say, this level up here. Okay, so if we're able to hold up on Monday at this level, we could get some kind of bigger retest of this overall thing here. We could actually get some kind of double top. Okay, so be aware of that, but right now you do have those divergences on the 2-hour. It likes to roll over the daily. Most likely we're heading lower. The cues on the 30-minute, you're going to want to pay attention to the very same things, right? See if that thing is able to curl up into positive territory on Monday, but look for that to fade because we've seen resistance at this level a few times now. We could get a triple top. This could just be coiling up to get a big move. And Tuesday, we do get CPI, guys. So pay attention on Tuesday. We are going to be live on Tuesday for sure. We're going to be live all week, but for sure on Tuesday, we'll be paying attention to that CPI number. Now, the thing here that you need to pay attention to, no triple divergence on the MACD up here for the Qs, but we do have that double top divergence right here on the 2-hour, okay? So this is really what I want to pay attention to. Look how close it is to that negative territory. If that starts to go negative, we can see this really start to escalate and start to drop pretty rapidly. Where would that drop to? Well, actually from here, you could most likely see some kind of bounce at our daily expected move on Monday. Maybe we actually do get some kind of bounce in this area and then we fall back down, possibly with PPI on Thursday. So we do have a few things going on. I believe it's Thursday. Someone might have to correct me, but I believe it's Thursday. But if this goes into negative territory, most likely you're taking out this base and heading lower. How would that look? Well, we might actually go all the way down to our monthly expected move before we see a reaction, get a huge head and shoulders over here. So that's really what I'm paying attention to right now to the downside. And then I'm really being still able to trade like water. Being a very adaptable trader is a very, very good thing in this market. We said March would throw traps at you left and right. I still believe that is going to happen, but I am prepared for a sudden drop and I am prepared for those traps as well. So be prepared to trade like water, move around those rocks and then find which way the stream is going. Those rocks this week are going to be CPI and PPI. For Apple, I just wanted to do this pretty quick, go into a 30-minute just to show you guys this structure here. We said this was looking decent and then we came up to this area. We didn't necessarily create that handle. Okay, so we really wanted to create some kind of handle in here to base out and grab some liquidity to go a little bit higher. That didn't necessarily fully happen. We kind of just went a little bit sideways. I wouldn't say that's a strong handle. We make that move up, and now you see us coming down pretty rapidly. What are we doing on the MACD? We're about to cross over. We're right in positive territory, but if we cross over for just a little bit, we're going to go into negative territory. We're going to take out this low. And this is where it really helps to be a part of the Patreon, really helps to take the course and everything like that, because you'll learn a lot of these things, right? This dips down, but we could see a bounce in the near future down at these lows. So having those weekly ranges is very useful because a lot of the time we gravitate to those levels. Apple, if it crosses over, it could gravitate to that lower expected move. We could see divergence and we actually could get a sustained bounce here. Okay, so really want to pay attention to those weekly those divergences on the shorter time frames and use those weekly ranges that we give out on Patreon to you guys, and you'll get that for NVIDIA as well. I know a lot of you guys are trading NVIDIA, but this is the main thing I'm paying attention to on Apple. Seeing this curl back down into negative territory would be a very, very bad sign. Even if we decide to go up higher, then I would want to look at a 2-hour, okay? Look how deep into negative territory this 2-hour is. No divergences or anything. So if we do see another move higher, this is still going to be in negative territory. And maybe it rolls back down one more time and we see another drop at this level. The weekly range is very, very good for Apple because it's somewhere up in this zone, right? It's somewhere in this area, and we know how Apple likes to gap past a zone, touch inside it, go a little lower. Well, we could touch inside it again and see those sellers rip that away. Okay, so Apple not looking good, not looking positive. If that changes throughout the week, we will mention it and we'll be watching this live. Amazon on the 2-hour here, you see all these divergences across the board. That's really what we were paying attention to. You got a bunch of divergences over here, which means there's weakness in this area. Okay, there's weakness in this area. How would it want to fall down? Well, it's creating that structure right now. We see the left, we see the head, we see the right shoulder on this 2-hour chart, and that can roll over the daily. Okay, so the daily could come down, and this has the structure a lot like the ETFs we've been looking at. If we want to break through this base, we could come down into this area. Pay attention to those weekly expected moves. They are so helpful. And when we do see trade setups, we will be putting out videos on Patreon throughout the trading day that can show you guys exactly what I am looking at. Okay, now if we dip down to these levels, I'm expecting that support to come in maybe with a good bounce, and then we get that left head and right shoulder really think that CPI might actually shock people if we head to lower levels quickly throughout the week. So we're going to really pay attention on Monday what the price action is doing before CPI. If people are getting too bullish or too bearish before CPI, maybe we need to position ourselves correctly. The last reason that Amazon could head to lower levels is this price action here. We're right next to negative territory. Okay, so if we get into negative territory, that selling can escalate and we can start a negative trend. Okay, we can flip this trend. These divergences up here are telling you this trend can reverse here and we can start to go negative on the 2 hour, which is a good sign that we are going to head to lower levels. Once we actually do break through this base, I'm paying attention to this gap. It's got some good liquidity up in this area. It really does. So I think a bounce from this area would be very likely, but I just want to point out this is very close to getting into negative territory. If you want this to get more positivity, we're going to need that to curl up on the MACD, most likely on a 30-minute. Okay, this 30-minute here, you're noticing it's trying to curl up into positive territory. So what does that mean when it curls up in positive territory on this 30-minute? We can test the previous high. We can go make a new one. And the good part about this is you have this high that you can pay attention to. You have this high that you can pay attention to. So if this wants to roll up, we can pay attention to resistance here, here, and then also pay attention to, at the maximum, our weekly expected move. I'm not drawing it where it is. Just go over to Patreon to get that because it's very, very useful, and Amazon is topping out right now. Tesla, I'm going to show you the slightly bullish thing on the shorter time frame, and then I'm going to show you the very bearish thing on the higher time frames. Okay, so we did talk about this on Saturday, but I think it's important. We're starting to try to base out here. We actually formed this cup, but this handle is very, very deep at this point, and now we're flagging sideways. The point where positivity can come in is if this rolls up, because this is technically some kind of divergence here, so we could see some kind of move maybe to fill this gap, and I can tell you that its weekly expected move is a little bit big for Tesla, and we could come fill this gap. Okay, so pay attention to any positivity in Tesla. The thing that we want to pay attention to, if that positivity comes in, this is going to be the 2 hour. So if we see that positivity come in, you'll notice it's going to take a lot of time for this to actually be able to get up into positive territory, right? It would take a few days. So unless we see a huge move, this is going to remain in negative territory. Look for that to roll back down if we see that positivity. Now, the overall bearish thing, this was kind of the bullish case. The bearish thing would be we just crossed on this daily, right? So we crossed on the daily. We've talked about Bollinger Bands before. When you get outside of them, you like to go and test the 5-day and then you see more selling come in. Well, what did we do? We got outside of them. We went up. We tested 5-day. We mentioned that on Tuesday of last week. We come out of them, we test the 5, now we can head a little bit lower. So it's really going to pay attention to those weekly expected moves. These white lines here are just levels that I'm paying attention to. I think we could get to 154 pretty soon. Going to be paying attention to earnings as well in April because we could be seeing some more bad news come out with earnings. So we'll have to pay attention to what's going on here. Now, if we did head to lower levels and see that turn back up, you'll notice we do have that daily divergence right by positive territory. So Tesla, Apple, things like that look like they could go have some bounces in them, which makes sense. They've been beat down for quite some time, while other stocks like NVIDIA look like they could fall down. And if NVIDIA has such a high weight in the overall stock market, we actually could see things where like Apple and Tesla go slightly up while the overall market goes down. Going into NVIDIA, we don't see divergences really, nothing like that, but we had some levels to pay attention to, and that's the best part about on Patreon, the weekly ranges for NVIDIA this week. I've already looked at them. They are such important levels. You would be very surprised where they're sitting at. If you're part of the Patreon, you're probably like, wow, those are two very important levels, and that's what the options market is expecting. So I really wouldn't be surprised for NVIDIA to kind of fluctuate, right? See a test of the top and then a test of the bottom and then get some kind of little bounce or something like that. I really think another trap is going to come this week, and we have to be very patient, make sure we're paying attention to these signals on those shorter time frames. That's why we're doing it live with you guys. Okay, so NVIDIA here, though, crossing down on this 2 hour, not in negative territory yet. Okay, not in negative territory. This could come all the way down into here and still not be in negative territory, all the way down to somewhere like 825, and then curl back up. So if that curls back up, we don't have divergence yet. We actually could see that push higher in order to get to that $1,000 mark. We're going to be pulling up tomorrow that max pain because that actually helped us out a lot this week, right? Once we get up towards 1,000, we saw those $1,300 calls. That strong move in the morning, they might have sold that off, and that's all we're seeing here. We're seeing some people take profit on a Friday when they do have way out of the money calls. Okay, so we did see that selling come in, slightly flagging a little bit here. We could head a little bit lower, but will that base out and cross over? Well, I can pay attention to my 2-hour here, see if it curls up in positive territory. What does it do when it curls over in positive territory? Good shot that we're going to test the high or go make a new one. That's where those weekly ranges are going to come in, and maybe we get some kind of 2-hour divergence up here, by Wednesday or Thursday of this week. So something to pay attention to, but NVIDIA really not looking good. Now, as far as upside goes, or is this going to pull back further? You're sitting right on the 5, so there's no reason to be like, oh yeah, this has to crash down. This is still a very parabolic move. This is taking profit here. Now, this is going to see, we have to get some kind of bounce out of this. Really, you have to bounce off this 5, because if you start to lose this, the probabilities really add up that you're going to come down to, say, 777. Okay, so this is why we want to pay attention to both sides of the range. If we start to break down further, look out for some kind of move down. Look if that 2-hour can curl back up. But right now, you're sitting right on the 5, so we're kind of in a decision point going into Monday. Now, AMD, you guys know that AMD is what I traded for this downturn. I took a little fun play on NVIDIA, but I broke even on that on Friday. But AMD has been my really good play, and I noticed this divergence right here. Tried to take a position there. I got squeezed out of it. I know to get out of this because it can go parabolic, right? Then we get another point up here. We see that divergence one more time. I take another stab at it up in this area because I was expecting resistance up in this area. Why was I expecting it? Those weekly expected moves for AMD, it's very, very important. And now I'm up almost 50% on the amount that I did put in. So my trade is going very, very well for AMD, but I know that this thing can flip back and forth. I've been doing very good trading like water. If this 30-minute wants to curl up one more time, we can test the high, maybe even go make a new one. So I am going to be paying attention to those weekly ranges for AMD as well this week. But this is a great trade setup. You have a divergence up here. You see that divergence on the RSI and MACD at the same time. That is huge. Okay, so we have to pay attention to it. Then we just flip over to a 2-hour. What's going on the 2-hour? Well, that was able to cross over, but something that a lot of people wouldn't notice here is this slight divergence on the MACD, and you have that divergence down here on the RSI at the same time, and it is very, very steep. So we actually could, with this divergence, see that roll over the daily chart. And the thing about the daily chart is, if you've taken my course, you know what we're doing right here. This is a very, very good setup for a long-term play on AMD to the downside. AMD, 30-minute divergence, 2-hour divergence, and now this daily divergence can confirm to the downside on the MACD, on the RSI at the same time between these highs. So we can see this roll over. If that starts to happen, sure, we can get reactions. We can come down to the 50, get a reaction up, but then is that going to set up that head and shoulders? Okay, so there is a lot of downside potential. You know that there is more risk to the downside than there is reward to the upside in this. Just because of the Bollinger Bands, you have the potential of the Bollinger Band to drop all the way down to 154. That would be like a 25-30% loss in AMD within a couple of weeks. So be very careful in these areas. You're seeing a lot of signals that say the momentum to the upside is weakening. It doesn't mean we can't see that push higher. We just have to pay attention to the shorter time frames, see if the 30-minute wants to curl up one more time, and then give us that drop, and maybe we see another divergence point here. That's what we'll be talking about live tomorrow. Meta, we did give you guys that monthly, okay? We gave you the monthly for Meta. So this is kind of what we do for individual stocks on Patreon, okay? So we overall pay attention to what the options market has priced in for the entire month. And you can notice that this is my other trade, right? I said I was going to most likely get bearish on this right up in this area. Where does Meta go to? Right where I want it to. So I got a little bit in here. And now if I do see a reaction up, I can kind of price that out. I can kind of scale into the position over time, because these are 2-hour divergences all the way across all of these moves up here. You can see it on the MACD and RSI down here at the same time, this flatness of the MACD here, but that overall divergence with this point right here. So we have multiple divergences here. This can start to roll over the daily, especially when we get into that negative territory. So I'm paying attention if this wants to get into negative territory. If it wants to go a little bit higher, then I am going to see this MACD curl up into positive territory. And maybe we do actually go test the top side of that monthly expected move. Now, this is overall a big cup, with a handle. So if we start to break through this level, really start to pay attention to this 483.08. This is some good liquidity right in here, and we could be setting up some kind of, big head and shoulders, left head, and then we get some kind of right shoulder in this area that looks something like this. That would be a very good structure to break down, and maybe this bounce right here would be the trap with, say, CPI, and then PPI rips that away. So something to pay attention to. We have a lot of rocks coming out, so trade like water this week. That is what I am going to continue to do. And people wonder, how do I use the VIX? And overall, we were talking about this little range. I'm going to get rid of that range at this point, maybe keep this base down here. But how did I figure out, we're going to most likely bounce? Well, I saw little divergences to the downside, and then I also saw this divergence on the 30-minute on the VIX here. And I just took a play, and I took a chance with it because the probabilities were there. And look at that. This divergence here showed this coming back down. Now we got that next pop. About to curl over one more time, so if we want to see a little bit of positivity, that would make sense. But the big thing that we have to talk about is the daily scale. We have crossed on the MACD. That's your first check. We've talked about it for about a week now. This is your first check. We crossed on the MACD into positive territory. What does this mean? This means volatility is in a daily positive trend. So these bounces, we have to treat them with caution if there are bounces to the upside in the overall market, because volatility is still in a positive trend. That means once it starts to fully close above this 200, we can see that volatility remain in this market for quite some time on this daily scale. So that is something to really pay attention to. The volatility is in positive territory. Volatility is on the uptick, and all we're waiting for is that second confirmation at this point, which is closing above the 200, because we're closing above all the moving averages. We just need to close above the 200, and then the third checkpoint for an overall crash or the overall bear market beginning is if this 50 is able to cross the 200, we are in for something a little bit more dangerous. Now, you want that to remain above the 200. I want to point that out. You want that to remain and trend up with this, with the readings here. So if this actually pops up and then comes back down, we actually might be extending the whole push higher into October, but you guys know that's not what I'm leaning towards at this point. I think we are at a turning point right now. The month of March is going to be wonky, and then we might see it all ripped away with some kind of dramatic thing, some kind of black swan or a bear market. So the main takeaway here is in the shorter time frames, we can still see that wonky price action. We can still see those traps that we expect throughout March because the Fed says they're dependent on data. Therefore, we have to be dependent on the data. So let's figure out how the market is overall reacting to that data and try to figure out how to go with the stream. Trade like water. And the reason that we have to trade like water and maybe flip back and forth for a little bit until something breaks is because volatility is in a positive trend right now on the daily scale. So we have to be cautious. A top is forming up here. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. You guys are great. You always like, you subscribe. Some people are taking the course, giving feedback. So that is always awesome. Please join me for my live video. People are finding it very helpful. And I really, that's the overall goal with this channel, is just to really be helpful. Good luck trading with the rest of your week. I hope you had a great weekend, and I hope you have a great night.